Good evening, YouTube. Tyre Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. Hopefully, you guys are safe, especially if you're in the Ozarks and Arklatex area. It's been relatively active, but not as active as what you would expect for an enhanced risk right now. Although I will say, I do think there still could be some increased activity overnight. This did have the look of a nocturnal threat, so we are not out of the woods yet. There are still multiple rounds of storms to go. Still a couple of active tornado warnings and a severe thunderstorm warning in effect right now. So we're not out of this just yet. So let's go ahead and kind of take a look at what we have going on here. Some of these tornado watches have been set to expire now, but there were a few more that were over here just a minute ago. Some of these have finally gone off. But over towards just to the east of Little Rock, it looks like we have an area where we still have a tornado watch. It's towards Pine Bluff, Clarksdale, heading towards the Mississippi border. And then off to the west here, it looks like we still have a tornado watch just to the east of Tulsa here, getting into Fayetteville, Arkansas, and a few other areas off to the west. This is probably going to be expiring pretty soon, though. As for our tornado warnings, we have one storm that particularly looks interesting right about here, but this looks like it's starting to gust out and go linear a little bit. It could still be a tornado threat that exists with this over the hour, but for the most part, it's the thing that's really been stopping tornadic development with these storms, I feel like, is that they never really had a chance to be discrete for an extensive period of time and really take advantage of that atmosphere. It was a very convective, or crapvective as it's sometimes called in the weather community. It was a crapvective type of deal, and as a result, these storms didn't get to breathe in and build a really strong updraft and mesocyclone that would be capable of producing tornadoes, some of which would have been strong, maybe even long track. I mean, with the forcing with this system was always in question, I would say. There were some trends where we were starting to go away from it, and that did look like it was the case early on, but eventually we all knew that as this front would draw closer to these storms, we would end up seeing these go linear, and we're seeing this be the case right now. These storms that are tornado warned are for the most southernmost sections of the storm. You can see these little fingers popping out here and there where maybe you could get a little brief spin up in these notches here. You still have to watch these, but the strong tornado threat looks like it's really starting to diminish, possibly. So we still have our enhanced risk in effect here. We do have a couple of tornado reports for today, but for the most part, it hasn't been what you would consider as enhanced risk numbers, so to speak, as far as severe reports. Our enhanced risk still stretches throughout all of the state of Arkansas. It sneaks into the northwestern corner of Mississippi here, although I do think that threat will soon diminish and we may get a downgrade here. These areas off further to the west, I'm not really seeing a whole lot going on there. I think a lot of the weather potential over there has started to diminish. Still over towards Fayetteville and Bella Vista, Muskogee, Oklahoma. We're going to have to watch that for probably at least another hour or two, maybe a little bit longer than that. But for the most part, our greatest weather potential seems to be well off to the east or to the south. When I look at these other radar sites trying to get an idea of what's going on here, you can even see it. It's more of a linear type mode. There's no real discrete cells out here right now. And this is a good thing because we aren't going to be seeing as many tornadoes, I think, as a result. But one thing I will say, and one thing that is a major note, and I don't know if I've mentioned that in the last video, I'm going to do a little bit of moving around here. I'm going to take off this severe weather outlook, and I'm going to show the hydrological outlook. There's a pretty robust flood threat with this. We actually have a moderate risk that's issued right here in the red, and this is towards Jonesboro, Arkansas, stretching a little bit further up north towards the Tennessee Valley, maybe even towards the Tennessee Valley here. Mississippi River Valley as well, for sure. But we're also got to keep Paducah in mind here, as they're also under severe thunderstorm warning, by the way. But Paducah, you guys are in this moderate risk for excessive rainfall and maybe some flooding. seems very much in play for you guys. And then southern parts of Illinois, you're in there as well. Poplar Bluff in Missouri. Jeez. Union City, Tennessee, you guys are in there too. Oh no, you hate to see this city involved in anything. Mayfield, you're in this moderate risk. It looks like, or just barely on the line between slight and moderate. Expect some heavy rainfall to continue through that area over the next 6 to 12 hours, probably. Jonesboro, Arkansas, all the way down towards Cabot, just to the northeast of Little Rock. This is where we're expecting some of the heaviest rainfall to occur, the most excessive rainfall. And then as we get into our slight risk here, we have Little Rock stretching all the way down towards just to the northeast of Livingston, Texas. We have some smaller towns like Woodville, Clomsonell, Jasper, Texas involved in this too. And we of course have, not too sure, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Feel free to correct me in the comments. But there's plenty of square mileage here of areas that could be under a slight to moderate risk for excessive rainfall and flooding. So that's one other thing to note with this system. Another thing that we have to watch that's ongoing is this ice threat that we've been talking about here. Southern Nebraska took a pretty hard hit earlier, it looks like, from the winter weather threat. But now we're watching this start to shift further and further to the north. We're going to actually switch over to the winter weather radar, and then we're going to go over to this site here in Sioux Falls. And we have snow ongoing here. A little bit of ice further to the south, so we're going to shift this further south so we can get a better idea of what's going on here. We can still see over towards areas like Broken Bow and North Platte, where we're still dealing with ongoing wintry mixes and icy conditions over here. This also exists for areas like Kearney and Grand Island. So far, Lincoln, it looks like you, for the most part, are going to be spared of the worst of this. But same can be said for Omaha. Although right now it does look like we are getting some frozen precipitation, but not quite completely snow. It looks like it's going to be a mix. Most likely, it's going to be ice. So you guys still need to be careful, although the worst conditions definitely seem to be a little bit further off to your north and west. We're anticipating things starting to go downhill for Iowa probably during the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, and this is going to linger throughout the day. Seems like the worst area is still going to be between Ainsworth and Sioux City here for right now, maybe Sioux Falls as well. But I think you'll get a mixture of snow and ice the further north you go. And then once we start to head further north towards southern Minnesota here, I do think that we'll still deal with a little bit of ice, but this is going to also change over to snow. So we'll change this radar site over here if we can. And we'll take a look at what we have going on here. And there's our ice. There's our snow potential right here. This area, I think, over towards Austin and Northwood in Iowa will eventually change over to snow. But in the meantime, we could still see up to about a tenth of an inch ice, maybe a little bit more. So definitely avoid traveling unless absolutely necessitated, like if it's an emergency only. That's the best course action you can really take at this point. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what we could have ahead here, so to speak. So we'll take one quick look here at the snowfall totals. We'll go ahead and look as far back as about 72 hours out. Most of the totals that we're going to be that are going to be like really impressive are going to be over towards the Rockies, as the snow is still falling over areas like Nebraska and South Dakota. Snow has only really just started to begin to fall over towards Minnesota, and we're still watching to see how much further to the east this treks, which we'll be doing over the next couple of days. But that's what we have going on currently. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we could have ahead for tonight and into tomorrow here. No real need to look at parameters. We already know what's going on. We're mainly just going to be here taking a look at what snowfall totals could lie ahead and what other type of mode these storms could fall into. So we'll start with the wintry side here this time. And that ice and sleet threat is going to start to exist more over towards Omaha and Lincoln in the overnight hours tonight. And then as this low moves forward, eventually we start to see a switch over to snow in both this area as well as northwestern Iowa. But I do expect some pretty impressive ice totals, at least a tenth of an inch, maybe even a quarter inch. Still could cause some major problems here. Could cause some issues with power. So hopefully you guys are ready for that should that situation occur. Eventually this changes more so over to snow than anything else as we head into the afternoon hours of the 3rd here, which is tomorrow. And we'll probably start to go over the impacts of tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning. When we backtrack and look at our severe weather threat, you can see these clusters of storms. They're more so linear. We're kind of leaning away from that tornado threat, but there is a point here where it does look like we start to try to get a little bit of resurgence here over central Arkansas in the overnight hours. So like I said, we're not done with this severe threat just yet. And the real cold front is still all the way back here towards Texas. New line of storms fires here, and this is where I think our the higher probability of damaging wind reports are going to occur is between the overnight hours into the early morning here. It's about 7 a.m. Eastern time, 6 a.m. Central. That's when we have our line of storms popping off here. I do see some convection out in front of this, but I do think it's a little bit too messy right now to really say that would turn into anything significant. It's really not until I would look at about maybe 16, 17 Z, which is getting closer to the late morning, early afternoon hours where I start to be concerned with a greater severe threat, maybe even a few tornadoes, but this still has a linear look to it. It's going to be a pretty much a nowcast situation where we're not sure what's going to end up happening with this. So all you can do is stay tuned. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a few YouTubers up live streaming. Wish I could be one of them, but I'm not there just yet. I'm working on it, though. So we see a few discrete cells here, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then we'll go into further detail with this tomorrow as the threat for severe looks to shift further and further to the east as we progress through Tuesday and into Wednesday. So now that we've looked at this, let's go ahead and look at our snowfall totals. We'll make our comparisons with the short range models. Oh wow, let's kind of pick up on what we've been looking at here. I don't know why I even went to that one, but this is what we have going on here. This is about 24 hours out. That's what the Euro is showing. Not too much different. Not too dissimilar with the Canadian GFS, the HRRR again, 3 kilometer and blender models. Pretty much all in agreement there. No surprises. We've been expecting that. The ice totals, it's still a little bit interesting, but the blender models has a very small area where you could have a probability of maybe getting up close to a quarter inch of ice. Not too surprising. It's mainly towards this northwestern and northwestern central corner of Iowa. No surprise there. Most of these areas already got their ice around central and southern Nebraska here, so no big surprise there. Look at the Euro. It's a little bit more aggressive. The Canadian's ridiculous. GFS is a little bit aggressive still. But for the most part, ice seems like it's just harder to forecast as far as a precip. This is still relatively experimental, I would say. But for the most part, I think the blender models is the most realistic here. Mainly looking at about a tenth to a quarter inch of ice possible around this area that has ice left to fall. For the most part, this area is going to start to run out of opportunities for ice to fall, and maybe it'll see some snow on the backside of it. Some ice may mix in, but in all likelihood, the worst of our ice should be ending probably within the next 6 hours, I would say, or less. But that's the end of this video here. If you guys enjoyed, definitely drop me a like. I appreciate it. I also have a video up for you guys in the morning highlighting tomorrow's threat, and we'll just kind of go from that point. So I'll see you then. It's been Tired Metalhead Weatherman. You guys have a good night.